So I can almost guarantee that you clicked on this video because of the color of the watch on the cover photo. I don't blame you, it excites me too. We will talk about this subject in a second. I also hope that this video reaches Sinn somehow. If it's shared with them, my proposal for this change of color, this idea of design, because it's something that hasn't left my mind ever since handling one of these watches a few months ago. It's one thing that I think would make this watch just legendary. And with that covered, I also want to address the greatness that is the U1 and the U50 design. It's pretty safe to say that the U50 is now seen as the most desirable German-made dive watch in the world today. Quite an amazing feat, and there are plenty of good reasons why. We can talk about the tegimented steel, submarine steel, one of the hardest steels in the world. It's virtually scratch-proof. We could talk about the SW300 movement that this watch uses. But more than anything, what Sinn gets so right is not only understanding its German origins, German roots, its approach to its design, but the fact that it addresses it from such a brutalist approach, militaristic of course, but there's a strong aggression to the way that a lot of these watches are designed. If we look to the Easy M collection, for example, if we look to the U1, the UX, the U50, all of these models share a common language, common denotation of understanding, high contrast, line weight, a great use of size, proportions, presence. And before we get any deeper into this video, on the wrist today is the Longines Navigation IDGuy. Fitted it to an olive drab strap, and the great history to this watch is, as we know, the origins are quite unknown, but this whole design and aesthetic originated thanks to Hanhart. Hanhart greatly influenced the Type 20 and the inspiration of those pilot chronographs, and that inspiration trickled through and affected how the pilot chronograph was further created, so there's always an origin somewhere. I was very fortunate to experience the Sinn U1 a few months ago, and something about the watch stuck with me. Its case design, from the lugs to the crown integration, to the way that the case back sits on the wrist, how it has this deep dish to the way it's been machined. I find it to be a watch that leaves very little to the imagination because you know, as you put it on, that this is an instrument, it's a tool, it's a utility built for a specific purpose. And it got me thinking a lot about the design of this collection, of the U1 and the U50, where it originated. I think the obvious influence was the Porsche Design IWC Ocean 2000. I would say one of the most incredibly designed dive watches, not from a practicality and functionality point of view, but purely as a design exercise, this watch gets top marks. I would say it's easily one of the top 10 best designed dive watches ever. Now, does this watch get everything right? No. The minimalism is a big problem. The dive bezel is kind of redundant. The dial layout is sparse, it's stark, it does work very well, but could be extremely difficult to read underwater. But as is the case with many designs, form over function, if you step back and look at this watch purely for its form and the thought process that went into it, you step back and look at this watch not as a dive watch, but just as a beautiful piece of design, and you think to yourself, how could they have gotten this better? Sure, it's not practical as a dive watch, but it's lightweight, it's made of titanium, and has so many incredible interpretations of the lobster tail integrated bracelet, and the way that the bezel knurling, it looks as German in design as anything else, is a part of its form. By all accounts, this piece is form over function, but you can see the base plate is there, it's established. I so wish we could see this design reintroduced again, but I think Porsche Design owns a part of this property, so it's a bit difficult. But we move across to the Sinn U1 and the U50, and you can see clear as day that this influence definitely played a part in the creation of this dive watch. But instead of copying and pasting it like many brands would have done, the function of this watch takes precedence over its form. And what an outstanding machine it is. Further emphasized by the concept of adding a spot color for bringing the size of the watch down and paying closer attention to how the abstract, more brutal use of plots and hands work so well together as a combination. Now look, I can understand that this watch is not going to appeal to everyone greatly. The handset is divisive. In fact, if we look to all the plots, you can see that there is a relationship between all of these elements where there is that, they call them the Lego brick styled hands or quite literal syringe styled hands. But let's take some time now to focus on the SDR, which is the all black with red accents. The best combination on top of that is to add the red rubber strap with it. And if I was given the option to choose a Sinn dive watch, this would be the choice. But now to the controversial point that I will swing to you. The use of red on a watch today, I think, is overdone. Like the color blue on many dive watches, the color red seems to be the go-to choice for a spot color. And don't get me wrong, the use of this color, there's nothing wrong with it. But for a dive watch, I think red isn't the most ideal choice. It's one of the first colors that becomes very difficult to discern as you get deeper in the water. And as most of us know, the color blue is one of the best, which is why we see the use of blue lume introduced with a lot of pieces today. It's purely because that spectrum of color is the most visible in the lowest of lighting conditions. But circling back to my earlier experience with the U1, the one thing that stuck with me while handling this watch, which had red accents, was this would look amazing in yellow. A black chassis with yellow accents is a tried and true color combination. And for a technical dive watch that has so much detail on its surface, I think the color yellow would emphasize it far more. As a package, I think the use of this color would make it look far less cookie cutter and more professional. For example, take a look at the Resonance Type 5 and the limited edition piece they introduced with yellow accents. Does this watch not only communicate a sense of playfulness, but also a sense of professionalism? And take a look at Doxa and the brilliant uses of colors that they have chosen to use with their dive watches for decades. Is there a chance that Sinn could give us a yellow combination for the U1 or the U50? Possibly. If I'm not mistaken, they have used yellow accents before. But the simple exercise of taking all of the red elements, converting them to yellow, what I find it does is make the white accents more pleasurable to the eye, while giving us a greater sense of contrast when we look to the matte black components. And what I like most about this proposal is that the yellow and black components still strongly communicates German design. And it is in fact a very popular combination if we look to the Bauhaus movement, if we look to Braun and their color range. As well as saying value for money, this is one of the best designed dive watches in the world. Not only telling you that it's a German design, but communicating the function, the complexity, the minimalism, the brutalism in a package that's neat in size that anybody could wear. There are plenty of reasons to understand why this dive watch continues to be popular, why it still remains desirable, how its design comes across highly masculine and purposeful, while taking many influences from the original IWC Ocean 2000 but improving them. And with that rugged exterior, which for many could come across as intimidating, let's not forget how well this watch performs. The criteria that it meets, the depths that it's certified to travel down to. Frankly, you could take all of this watch in and say that the word impressive doesn't even begin to cut it.